Andrew, two big royal stories today. We haven't really got into this story the Mail's been pounding now for days about the BBC and its infamous interview on Panorama with Princess Diana.
Martin Bashir.
And the role of Martin Bashir, the journalist, who's still the BBC's religious correspondent or editor, I think.
Yeah.
The more I read about this, the more ironic it gets for me, because I remember being a tabloid editor covering Royal Beat when the BBC would take an extremely tough view of any so-called tabloid skullduggery. And yet here we are on the biggest royal scoop of them all. And it turns out that Princess Diana was basically duped, it is alleged, by Martin Bashir into believing all sorts of wild conspiracy stuff through forged documents, which he presented to her. And Earl Spencer, her brother, has been cooperating, I think, with the Mail on this and putting pressure on the BBC. Where's this going to go? Because the repercussions of that interview were gigantic. And you can chart a path, really, from that being when Diana was thrown to the wolves, if you like, out of the royal protection bracket and ends up dying in an underpass with no royal protection.
These are extraordinary revelations, Piers. I can remember when she did that interview, thinking, why on earth did she do that? It was so damaging to her reputation. She broke so many conventions. But now we know, because Lord Spencer, her brother, has clearly talked to the Mail. Martin Bashir, presented a baffling a list of reasons why she should do it, including he told the princess that Prince William had a watch which was spying on her, that her husband was having an affair with Tiggy Leg Book, the nanny, that the Foreign Office was spying on her, that some of her own officials were in the pay of the Secret Service and were spying on her. She was a very vulnerable woman. Martin Bashir deliberately played on her insecurities to get that interview, which was the scoop of the century. And as a result, the Queen wrote to Charles and Diana. Only the Queen writes to her child. Most people would talk to their children and says, you've got to get divorced. And that set in train a whole succession of events. She was stripped of faith. She lost her protection officer. And if she'd had her royal protection officer still, she would never get in that Paris underpass. It's profoundly disturbing what the BBC did.
The Mail, I've got to congratulate I congratulate the Daily Mail, honestly. You've been pounding this day after day after day, and I think it's one of those stories that's beginning to really gather momentum as the full reality of what the BBC did here becomes clearer.
Yeah, and at the time, there was an inquiry into what Martin Bashir did. It was conducted by the Director of News, Tony Hall, who effectively cleared Martin Bashir. The BBC didn't talk to Princess Diana or Earl Spencer. That man, Tony Hall, then went on to become the Director General of the BBC.
Well,
the man in charge
Bashir, but they effectively fired the forger. So the guy that Bashir got to do the forgery, he got disenfranchised by the BBC, but the person who ordered the forgery and used it to dupe Diana. And I think Martin Bashir's got serious questions. We keep being told he's seriously ill with coronavirus and wish him all the very, very best if he is. But he was photographed by the Mail on Sunday at the weekend. He was out sometime in the last few days out buying a takeaway. So he can't be that ill. And I think he's got some serious questions to answer, as has the BBC.
do. Yeah. And you're right, because if the tabloid newspaper had behaved like that, if your newspaper behaved like that, or mine, the BBC would have been on our back morning, noon and night.
They would have been demanding the head of the editor, of the publisher. If it had been Rupert Murdoch, they'd have been demanding he be stopped from owning newspapers. I mean, you can just imagine the high moral ground the BBC would have taken.
The BBC's promised a robust investigation with appropriate independence. This piece in the Mail today, Di Davis, former head of Royal Protection, says that we now need a police investigation.
Well, it was 1995, and within 2 years, Diana's dead. And she was thrown away from the Royal Protection bracket because of all this, and that's why it's consequential. You can chart a direct line from this Panorama interview, her being effectively removed from the royals and all the protection it afforded her, and then dying in a French underpass. Serious consequences. Kevin, I want to come to you with another royal story. So, extraordinary series of events here. Prince Harry decides that in absentia from his $11 million Californian mansion, he wants to be represented at the Remembrance Sunday. And he wants somebody to lay a wreath on his behalf. And the palace apparently said, no, we're not going to let you do that. You're not a working royal. and it's the working royals who are there physically who will be laying wreaths. So what does Harry do? He gets together with Meghan, his wife.
Well, what do you mean he gets together with Meghan? He's married to his wife. You don't have to get together with her.
You can present the case for the defence in a minute if you finally work one out.
There's a way you phrase it which becomes instantly judgmental.
Well, you know what? I am judgmental.
You are.
Because what they then do, they go to a military cemetery in Los Angeles, and they then invite a photographer, one of their preferred photographers. Remember, they're very privacy-minded, these two. They don't like the press, they don't like photography, unless they're controlling it. And they then release a series of images of themselves at a cemetery, laying flowers and a wreath and paying tribute. Now, Prince Harry's perfectly entitled, Kevin, as a former member of the armed forces, to pay tribute to the armed forces. Of course he is. However, this smacked to me of a really distasteful PR stunt designed to say to the palace, you might try and stop me having my right to have a liveried servant lay my wreath, but you're not going to stop me grabbing the PR headlines. And that, I'm sorry, it sticks in my gullet.
OK,
this guy's no duty. He's doing no duty.
Hang on a moment, can I just... So my side of the story, Kevin, before you respond, is that the armed forces mean a lot to Prince Harry. Yeah. He served 10 years. He was blocked, allegedly, from having a wreath in his name placed at the cenotaph. Why wouldn't he want to show his respect when he has such a strong connection?
Why do it with a photographer in an American cemetery?
Because if you don't do it with a photographer, people don't know that you've done it.
Oh, please, do me a favour. You can just issue a statement saying you're thinking of people.
And you would
Kevin,
still,
tell me why I'm wrong.
criticise them.
Cut him some slack here. Cut him some slack. Now, I have no candle. I have no candle burning for Harry Windsor. He's decided to go over the state, live a new life with his wife, make lots of money, do whatever they want to do. But he did serve, as Susanna said, 10 years in the armed forces. He served in Afghanistan. He has comrades who died. He has others who were seriously injured. He had a role with the Royal Marines. Yes, he's given it up, but he founded the Invictus Games. You would have criticised him if he'd have gone for a slap-up meal or a coffee instead of laying a wreath there.
He could just issue a statement. He could issue a statement from his California mansion.
No, come on.
Of course he could.
No, he also couldn't he spend the time on Remembrance Sunday? Why couldn't he spend the time paying his respect?
You're both missing my point. I've already said he's perfectly entitled to pay his respects. But what they did was they launched a PR stunt with a preferred photographer to take the attention away from the royals back in London, attending the Remembrance Sunday, very truncated, obviously, in terms of people, service, because they felt thwarted because he couldn't get somebody to go and lay a wreath on his behalf. And here's the point, Kevin. He's no longer a working royal. He doesn't want to do the wet Wednesdays in Stoke, visiting old people's homes.
He's still a member of the royal family.
He wants to live the life of a celebrity in California. Good luck to him, but don't try and play the rival royal family, competing with the Queen and William and Charles and others who are actually in London doing their duty. I don't like that. I don't like what they're doing.
You could see the medals on his chest, which he'll have earned most of those. Even if he was never a royal in the first place, he served 10 years. He would want to commemorate the fallen and those.
Do it without your photographer choosing your pictures of you in an American cemetery.
I think, Piers, you come across as bitter over this.
Maybe you keep saying it's bitter. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
you can see from
respects.
Fine, you can see from the latest polls how deeply unpopular the pair of them have become. And I think one of the reasons is they want their royal cake and they want to be able to eat it. Tova O'Brien in New Zealand. You're far enough away to not have to worry about what you say. So what do you think of this?
I'm just thoroughly enjoying being courtside to this discussion from all of you. I think we had a kind of similar but different situation during our election campaign when the leader of the opposition got caught in a candid moment in front of the entire press corps praying. and kneeling at a chapel, and then when she got a lot of backlash over this very private moment being broadcast everywhere, she blamed the media and said we weren't meant to be there, though she had kind of invited us all in and we were all there at her behest. So I see your point, Piers, but I also think Susanna's right. If the press isn't there, if there isn't a photographer there, you don't see that happen, and he does have a long legacy of service to the armed services. So I'm going to sit squarely on the fence on this one and just enjoy the rounds being
If
thrown
ever anybody
between
is
the pair
not
of
on
you.
the fence, is you.
On this one, I'm gonna sanctuary.
Well, you know what? I'm sure it'll divide opinion, like everything they do. I just found it very distasteful to announce you've got a photographer doing it, and then to release your pictures to the world, showing that you're having a rival sort of remembrance thing going on in California. It was. That's exactly what they're doing.
It was a moment of remembrance.
They were angry the palace wouldn't bow to their latest demand, so they did a rival photo call, and I found it distasteful. You may not agree with me, viewers, or you might, but I am allowed to say I found it distasteful.